Here we are back again, second roll of the evening. It is 8:41 p.m. Eastern Time on the 24th of September, 2021. Friday evening, nice cool fall weather here in eastern North Carolina. Got a beautiful day outside today, beautiful evening tonight. So we're here for a 1958D. This is a City National Bank and Trust Company of Chicago roll. City National Bank and Trust Company of Chicago. Very nicely wrapped. 1958 Denver mint roll. Go ahead and start pulling this apart now that you've seen both ends live. Using a plastic tool. It's a tool I believe to open cell phones that I ordered off Amazon quite a long time ago, that I used to open these Batdorf rolls and these all the crimp-ended rolls. Bob, I'm gonna say close to an hour away from Fort Bragg, which by the way is changing their name. Fort Bragg is not going to be Fort Bragg anymore, because evidently it was named after a person who was a slaveholding sympathizer, and they're wanting to take away all of the homage paid to people who were like that, which I don't really have a pony in that show one way or the other, just letting you know. It won't be Fort Bragg for very long. So here's one for Taco John. First coin in the roll. We're going to go for Taco John. We're going to see what we can find in this roll. Could be a really nice roll. Right here, right off the bat, I'm going to show you something and tell you about something that has been debunked. It's no longer considered a reality. Okay, this obverse is a clean, decent, and normal obverse. Okay, look right up here. Around the top right section of the 8, you'll see what almost looks like the point of a 7. Well, this is what Walter Breen thought it was back when he wrote his reference back in the 1970s, 1980s. And he listed this as an overdate, 1958 over 7 overdate. Well, that's not what this is. It's just a die gouge. It's actually possibly even a gouge on the hub, because there are a lot of different ones like this. But just to let you know, when you see that listed someplace, or when you see one of those for sale, they are very common. Mr. Breen made a mistake. They have been debunked, and they are not considered of value. As Taco John got the first coin in the roll, first coin happened to be a normal coin, so there we go. Jeff Dunn picks up coin number 2. And coin number 2, it is a later dice date coin, and it is also apparently a normal coin. We'll take a look at the reverse on the first 10 coins in this roll. 1958D is not one of the issues that is known for double die reverses, so for the most part we're not going to bother taking up the time in the show with those. Overdates, Randy, don't exist in Lincoln Cents or any 20th century series, to be truthful. Overdates are where one date digit is punched over a different date digit. And that has not happened since the series of coins that started in the 19th century. Indian cents were the last possible repunched dates and overdates. So do you see what I see? Possible D over D north here. Let's get into this and take a good look at it, and we'll go back to talking about the repunch dates and overdates. I see, kind of hit me really quickly as soon as I saw it, and I thought, that's neat. And then I started doubting it. So I'm going to go ahead and pull it out just in case it is. But here's what I'm seeing. Right here, you got a right hook. And then right up here, you've got what looks like the top serif. So it looks like another D sticking up right here. That's what it looks like. So we'll look for a marker on this, and then we'll hold it out. See if we can find anything we can use as a good marker for this particular die. Got nothing else going on here. We've got east and west die scratches. Old east and west die scratches above the date. We've got a little pickle of die damage right here, just to the southwest of the mint mark. And you can still see what appears to be mint mark doubling right here. I'm not going to say it is. I'm just saying right now we need to look at that again. We need to give that a good hard look. So that one's going to be for Carl Ignatz. We're going to pull it out to the side. We're going to call that a prospect. It's going to be die number 1 for the roll. Now let me get back into discussing the repunch date and overdate thing. Repunch dates and overdates specifically are created when dates are punched into the dies. And they have not punched dates into the dies since the 19th century. So all of the 20th century coins that you can think of that have one date with another date, they are all design hub double dies. Design hub double dies are class 3. One design over a different design. The manufacturer of these particular double dies is exactly the same as the manufacturer of the 60 large over small and small over large date double dies. They're two different designs in the 1970 small date over large date double die. They're two different designs. Those just happen to have the same date on them. But the 42 over 1 dimes, the 18 over 17 nickels and quarters, those are all double dies. They are not over dates. Because over date specifies that the dates are punched into the dies separately from the remainder of the design. Whereas double dies, the entire design is punched at once, including the date. And that's exactly how the more modern dies are created, the 20th century dies. There's a split lower and upper serif, a little bit of a split in both serifs. There's the lower split serif right there. See it pretty well. And then if I crank it around this way, you can see the upper. Should be able to see the upper pretty well. You see it there in the reflection of the 9. So there's another 1958 RPM. And this one has an angled die scratch above the 9. Angled die scratch above the 9. A couple of them actually. So that's going to be our die number 2 for the roll, because die number 1 is that prospect of a minor RPM, or a D over D north RPM possibility. So there's nothing on the reverse of this one. So Crispy's going to get our first example of the next RPM for the roll. Now coin number 6. Thomas Murphy. These are very nice coins, by the way. Very nice coins. Nothing on the reverse here. Now, coin number 7, penny hoarder. Another thing to keep a watch on and check for on 1958D especially. There's a double die known that has a little doubling above the 9 on the date and below the B in Liberty. Mike, I'll probably be broadcasting for at least the next hour. Tonight's a broadcasting evening for me. What do I have here? Well, let's get really close to this one and see what's going on. Well, we do have, if nothing else going on up there, we do have, well, nothing else. Never mind. Well, I kind of wonder what I'm looking at here. It looks more like actually damage to the coin or to the die. Maybe a die chip. Maybe that's what it is. Appears to possibly be a die chip. So, it never hurts to hold this out. Buffin, you never said anything wrong. Nothing to apologize for. Oh, yeah, we're watching them boom. As soon as I get done with a roll, I finish the show off. I move on to the next one. I try to keep these shows around 45 minutes or less. So we kind of chit-chat and talk while I'm going through the roll, and then as soon as I'm done going through the roll, I'm done with the show. I do 8 of these a week, and right now I'm doing 2 auctions per week. So I'm basically in front of the microphone operating a camera 20 to 25 hours a week. And then I'm doing mail and putting things in people's packages and all that sort of thing when I'm not doing the on-camera stuff. Either that or I'm preparing for another show. This is another one of those little North Hook looking possible RPMs. Got the east and west die scratches right above the date. Got that little bit of damage to the southwest of the D. And that's for Bob. So that's going to be another die 1 for the roll. Possible RPM. There's one for Malcolm. And Malcolm gets one with interesting damage to the die out here. It's like little feathers. Interesting damage to the die. And then we've got a die chip on the 1. There's a die chip on the bow tie. Interesting little die chip on the bow tie there. Later die state this is. Got a die crack on the forehead. And I'm surprised there's no die chips in Liberty. Take a look at the reverse on this one real quick and see if we have a bunch of die breakage on the reverse. Doesn't look like it. Looks like we don't have much of anything going on the reverse on this one. So, that's for Malcolm. Malcolm, have fun with that one. Alright, that's coin number 10. Now coin number 11, Bob Hampton again. Bob Hampton will get this coin, which... Oh, that's an interesting die gouge down there near the rim. But it otherwise appears to be a normal coin. What I was getting at was I've found a couple of different double dies that actually show an extra piece of a B right down here, just barely below the regular B. And so you have to be watching for that too. Something to watch for when you're on the hunt. I think I'm going to do that. I might change some things around about this show and call it On the Hunt. On the Hunt with your host, Chuck Daughtrey. Airing right here on the Copper Coins channel. Sounds kind of cool. I like that idea. On the Hunt with Chuck Daughtrey. Here's another one of the die number 2. This has got the angled die scratch above the 9. That was Mac's idea. On the Hunt. He said, man, you've already said your slogan. On the Hunt. It was on one of the splash screens that I did for the title. The title screen for one of the different dates and mint marks that I reuse. On the Hunt. Here's another one with that die damage on it. So it's going to be a normal coin, but it's got that nifty die damage on it. These coins are in pretty good shape. They are very nice, outstanding looking coins. A few little spots here and there. This one's for Carl. Not to be confused with Sea Hunt. That's correct. We are on the hunt for RPMs, double dies, and other assorted numismatic anomalies. Join us each week as we go on the hunt right here on the Copper Coins channel. Could you see that? That would be a really cool little commercial. Here's one for Malcolm. See what Malcolm gets. Yeah, it looks like it's going to be another one of our normal coins. Unfortunately, a normal coin. Hey, Steven. You're not late. You're just fashionably tardy. You haven't really missed much. I tell you what. This is our second roll for the evening. And it has not been an evening for finding goodies. I can tell you that. Here's one for Farm Dog. And Farm Dog gets die gouge there in the vest below the 1. That's probably going to mark us another normal coin in the roll, which it appears this is going to end up being. Can hear my dog downstairs squeaking his new ball. My dog loves to play with his new ball. Every time we get a new ball for him and get it out, it has a squeaker in it, and it squeaks for about the first 2 hours until he decides to tear it out. When he tears it out, it no longer squeaks. I breathe a sigh of relief. And we've seen this die before. Okay. These are very nice looking coins. Well, we have a definite RPM, and then we have another that is a possible RPM. And then we have this interesting little character. I'm not even sure what's going on with this. So we're pulling these out too, just to have a better look at them later. So that one's going to get pulled out. That's a die 3 there for this roll. Coin number 20 now for Marshall. Mr. Marshall gets, well, this is one of the ones that has the die gouge in the vest below the 1. So we've seen this die before. And now number 21. Adam Chambers. What is that over there? What? That's actually a die gouge. It's a huge die gouge. Man, that thing stands out like a sore thumb. I almost thought it was coin damage there for a minute. It's not coin damage. It's actually a die gouge. Of course, the graders, when they see it, they might think it's actually a hit on the coin, and they'll take off for the grade because that big mark down there. But it stands out on the coin. You can see because when I turn it toward the light at the top, well, you can actually see that the light is coming from above. That's definitely a die gouge. Very interesting. Or as my brother would say, interesting. There's one with the gouge underneath the vest. It's very kind of interesting because my brother and I were not raised together. I did not know him until I was 50 years old. And we are very much alike in many ways. He's a year and a half older than me. And we were raised relatively close to one another, although we never knew each other. He was in the Air Force in Germany. I was in the Air Force in Germany. Still never knew each other. And we kind of met because of ancestry DNA. Tests were taken, matches were made. I think this might be another one of our... Nope, may not be. No, it isn't. Okay. Yeah, tests were taken, matches were made, and he was notified that his birth mother had been found, which happens to be my mother, who put him up for adoption when he was born. So I never got to know him. But now we know each other. And he and I have kind of kindred spirits. It's kind of almost like twins. How they sort of communicate without really communicating. That's really, really weird. But it's very, very cool to have someone I'm so close to in physical and mental being. Yet we were raised worlds apart from one another. He was raised more or less as a country boy, kind of a farmer type country boy, and I was raised more or less in a big city. I went to high school in the big city. In Germany, I was there from February of 87 until December of 90. I was there February 87 to December of 90. Had to think about that one. Here's one for Thomas Murphy. Seen this die before. Has that little tiny bit of die damage right there at the very front corner of the vest. Seen this a number of times. Haven't really made much of a mention of it, but there it is. It is what it is, and well, this is another normal die. One of the most important things to going through rolls, original rolls of coins, looking for die varieties, is to pick markers out and get yourself acclimated to the different dies that are represented in the particular roll that you're going through, because well, at the time that the mint is making coins, they're only making coins on a certain number of presses at once. Because of that, most of the coins that you're going to get in any individual original source roll will be from any one of 7, 8, 10 different dies. So once you learn the 7, 8, 10 different dies that there are in a roll, the faster you'll be able to make it through that roll, having confirmation that you've seen this, that, or the other before. Now this is very interesting here. That is very interesting. That's a very nice... Is that listed as an RPM? I don't think this is an RPM, but it is definitely a nice heavy die gouge. coming out of the bottom of the D. It could be listed as an RPM, but there's one from 56D that's listed as an RPM. It kind of looks like this. I get a little confused. But a Spear D, yeah. Frank, that I know of, I did not go to Morocco. There were a couple of countries I went to that were kind of desolate and sandy. I don't even know where I was. Didn't have a need to know where I was. I just did my job, you know. All right, here's a coin number 30. Coin number 30 for Go Wi-Fi. And this has got the gouge in the vest below the 1. We've seen this die within this roll before. And so those little markers like that can help you determine that you have seen a coin from that particular die pair before. Once you've seen a coin from a die pair and have studied it, then, well, you know what all of the other coins from that die pair have with regard to the design, because the design will be the exact same thing on every coin struck by a given die, except for the wear placed on that design by continual striking of the die against coins. That is referred to as die state. Die state is the age of the die at the time it strikes a particular coin. This coin's die state is early to mid die state. Early mid die state means that you have a relatively nice amount of crispness and sharpness to the outside edge of the design elements near the rim. Very few flow lines. Now these are flow lines. This is actual movement of steel molecules on the surface of the die as coins are struck. Molecules of steel move outward like a pancaking thing. It's almost like raindrops on a windshield as you're driving down the highway. And the stronger the outer edge of your letters are, and the shorter these lines are, the earlier die state your die is at the time it struck your coin. So this is an early mid die state, EMDS, early mid die state. And on this side, we have mid to late die state. It's actually late mid die state, LMDS. You still have relative strength on the outer edges of the design, but it's starting to chip away a little bit. You can see feathering on the outside edges of the lettering. This is where you're getting toward late die state. There are 7 different die states altogether. 7 different ones. I will say them in order. Very early die state. Early die state. Early mid die state. Mid die state. Late mid die state. Late die state. And very late die state. This one is a late die state. You can see that the feathering on the outside edges of these letters toward the rim is rather large. You're losing definition to the outer edge of the lettering, and that's happening because all of the molecules of steel that made up the edge of this were in very high stress, and they started chipping away. As they start chipping away and traveling toward the edge of the design, then you end up with this appearance where the edge of the letters are kind of losing their definition. That happens in mid to late die state and into late die state. Got nothing on this one either. So number 34 now. 34 will go to Sureg. Sureg gets coin number 34. Let's look at coin number 34 and see what's there. Well, this one appears to be not much of anything, I guess. Another mid to late die state. kind of pop up with information like that once in a while during my broadcasts. Just something I talk about while we're looking at the coins. Seen this die before. Has a very heavy diagonal die scratches in around the front part of the date up in the front of the vest. But it gives us more chit-chat that you can learn from. Die states generally happen as a result of a number of different things that can factor into how many strikes you get before you move to a new die state. So, depends on how hard the die is, depends on how well it was hardened, it depends on how much pressure they've got the machine set to strike the coins at, it depends on the exact molecular mixture of the bronze itself that the dies strike with, or the composition, basically the composition of the planchets, because zinc planchets age the dies differently than the bronze planchets did, and the steel planchets of 1943 aged the dies differently from the bronze planchet years around that. Silver works differently from gold, works differently from copper. Let me get into that, David, after I go through the remainder of what I was already explaining. Then I'll get to yours. So the different die states, there's 7 different ones, and by the time you get 50,000 coins into a 1 million coin run, you're already finished with 5 of the 7 die states. 5 of the 7 die states happen within the first 50,000 coins. Now, with regard to changing dies, dies can be changed for a number of reasons and are not paired together and changed as pairs. Dies can be changed because of a change in design, because of a change in year, or because of a change anytime they're going to pull dies off and retool the machines to strike different coins. They could retire those dies and move on to new dies at any given point. Generally, that won't happen, but it does sometimes. And the other reason they would retire dies and put new dies on the machine is when a die breaks or when it is considered too used to continue making coins. Those can be replaced one at a time, and often are. Dies that are replaced one at a time can be easily paired with double dies or repunch mint marks, and you end up with a die variety that has 2 different opposing dies with 2 different sets of opposing die markers. This happens sometimes when you see listings for an RPM where it says reverse die changed. Well, that's because the reverse die was finished for one reason or another, and they changed the reverse die to a different die. Now, here's another thing for you. They don't always change dies out to brand new dies. So it's not always going to be the case that when you change a die that you're actually going to go back to very early die state and start over. Sometimes dies that were used on one machine are pulled and considered good, put back in a box to be reused, and when a different die breaks or is clashed or cracks or is terminally bad, they're going to pull that die off, reach in the box and grab a die and stick it on. It may be a brand new die, it may be a used die. So if they put a brand new die on, they get 200 strikes out of it and it breaks. They reach in the box and pull another die out. It could be one that was used on a different machine that is now striking nickels. And it was just pulled off and it was still a good die, so they needed to keep it to use it again. They hang that die. And you end up actually having a replaced die, a replacement die that is of later die state than the one it replaced. That too is possible. So there is no, I mean, we're talking about a tool shop. It's a machine shop. And they are making utilitarian discs of metal to be used in commerce. They're not making these so that we will study them. It was our choice to study them. They were making these so they would be spent and used. The fact that we collect them and keep them this way is not something the Mint had necessarily planned when they created them. So what we have here is a divergence from their initial purpose. Given that this is a divergence from their initial purpose, the different records that we had hoped they had kept were not kept. For instance, you talk about the large dates and small dates, 1970, 1974, 1960, 1982, and then other design differences from other years of different coins. Type 1s, Type 2s, large letters, small letters, anything that makes up a variety like that. They never kept mintage figures for the different ones, and the reason for that is because they didn't see it to be necessary. They just changed out the dies and kept going. So there were never mintage figures for any of the large date or small date varieties simply because there was never a need to. So different mint mark styles used, like 1946S has 3 different mint mark styles. They never kept track of how many coins were minted with each of the different mint mark styles. We had to figure that out by studying the coins. And in studying the coins, we've kind of figured out that, for instance, 1946S, which we do have a 1946S roll that we will be doing this week. 1946S is coming up, 3 rolls from now? We've got, I'm looking at it right now, we're on 58D now, we've got a 60D, a 62 Philly, and then a 1946S. So that ought to be pretty exciting. 1946S, it's original bank wrap roll too, so we never know what's going to come out of those. Here's another one of those die 3 for the roll. I'm not really sure what this is, but we'll figure it out. It does not look like an RPM, but we're going to have to take it and get a good close look at it with the microscope and get a good photograph of that anomaly and figure out what we're doing with it. There is a lot out there about coins. There's a lot of information. There's a lot of study. Some of the study has been published. Other study has not been published. Look at the toning on this. Oh, good gosh, look at the colors on this coin. I saw that when it was laying there, and I thought, nah, it's just the light of my screen. That's the way my monitor is reflecting onto the coin. No, this is the actual color of the coin, folks. This is beautiful. That is an RPM as well. I do believe. No, maybe not. Oh, it looks like it is. Yeah, it's an RPM. Minor one, but it's an RPM. We're going to hold this out. This one's for Eric. So the Mint has no input in your or anyone else's designation on a die that produced an error. No. The Mint does not care at all about what we are doing, about what we call them, about what we do. We have some people who have made inroads with the Mint and have actually been to the Mint and discussed some of the different things with them so they can get a better understanding of how to study the coins, the dies, and the minting process. People who have watched it from beginning to end and know a lot about it, have written about it. I've learned from them. But the Mint in and of itself as an entity, this is the last coin in the roll right here, and we do have an RPM. This is a die 2 for the roll, as it has that angled die scratch above the 9. So it's a die 2 for the roll. A little spotty because it was on the end of the roll. And that's it for this. I will continue this discussion when I come back on for the 1960 D-roll here in a few minutes. But what we're going to do right now, somebody remember where I was in that conversation. Remind me when we get to the next show, and I'll continue it. About the mint and the minting process. All right. There are all of the normal coins. I'm going to stack up the die varieties, or purported die varieties, the possible die varieties, and we're going to go through the numbers on the flips, just so Eric has a record of it. It's coin number 9, number 3, number 50, number 12, number 5, number 47, 19, that is a 19, number 8, and number 48. All right, so I'm going to stack these against the others. And I'll see you guys in, I'm going to say, somewhere around 8 to 10 minutes, probably right around 9:30 Eastern. I'll see you for reveal number 337. That'll be the last one we've got scheduled for tonight, and I'll see you then.